Be valuable. And if you don't know how to be valuable where you work or where you're operating or on whatever mission you're on, you better be asking. It's okay to ask. Let's say an organization isn't really well built to make sure you know what the expectations are of you and vice versa. You have to take the initiative to seek it.
Welcome to Leadership and Motivation Unleashed, practical leadership for modern workplaces. A podcast where we explore actionable strategies to help you lead with confidence, build cohesive teams, and create thriving workplace cultures.
We're here for the career-focused professionals climbing the corporate ladder, the managers navigating team dynamics, and the leaders shaping the future of work. In each episode, we'll break down challenges, share practical advice, and leave you with insights you can apply today.
I'm Patrick Law, your co-host, a Gulf War veteran with over 26 years of corporate leadership experience in banking and payments, blending precision and innovation with a tad of passion to solve big challenges.
And I'm Rachel Book, a C-suite trusted advisor and an HR leader with 2 decades of experience at Fortune 50 companies, specializing in building people-first strategies and driving impactful talent solutions.
Together, Rachel and I, we combine operational expertise and transformational leadership to bring you real-world advice on leadership, workplace culture, team dynamics, career growth, and anything else that we may want to delve into.
So, if you're ready to take your career and leadership skills to the next level, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Today, we're going to talk about relational expectations between employers and employees. Probably not the best title. It sounds very lofty, but really what we're here to talk about is thinking over the past decades, right? And especially even more so in the past probably year to 3 years. It seems to me like the relationship or the contract, that's in air quotes, between an employer and employee is changing. What you see from the employer side is less commitment, right? You see companies laying people off even when they've just raised a round of funding, even when they're reporting great numbers to Wall Street, and they're still culling their ranks, they're still reducing their workforce. Sometimes it's to focus on other areas of business. And very often they're employees that have been there for decades, people who are top performers, and yet they're just sometimes told in a very sterile email or Zoom meeting, like, sorry, you don't work here anymore, right? Despite all of your contributions. And I think a lot of people are like, I gave my everything to this company. I was planning to stay here until I retired, right? So you see a lot of that more so recently, which is very rattling to some people. And then what you also see is employers looking at habits of job seekers and saying, oh, there's so much job hopping, or, oh, look, they were only at this job for a year or two, and they are expecting more stability. They would like to hire people who want to give them a commitment of 3 to 5 years. And I think that this is a shift that is here to stay. I think that the contract or the relationship between employers and employees is changing. I think gone are the days where somebody graduates from college or leaves the military and joins a big company and says, I'm going to be here until I retire. And if I just keep my head down and do my work, everything's going to be fine, and they'll just let me stay here as long as I don't, lie, cheat, or steal. And that is not the case anymore. Unfortunately, even though the rules have changed, I don't think we've prepared job seekers or employers enough to be able to operate within these new rules. So what do you think of that?
You're right. That's a lot. I have hot sports opinions about everything. I'll just jump in and say, and this is why, if you guys read our bios, why Rachel and I work so well together, because she is very buttoned up and highly polished.
Sometimes.
So I joined corporate America in 96 with at the time, I think it was privately held. It ended up going public, founded and led by one of the world's greatest entrepreneurial spirits around, Darwin Deason. I'll say his name out loud. Hard charging, hustle, go hard, go fast. It was known in the organization that there was no guarantees you'd see tomorrow. It was what have you done in the last minute for the organization? I'll say younger listeners, but maybe all listeners, depending on where you were and what your belief system is would hear that and say, oh, that's horrible. What a horrible place to work. But for me, what it did for the rest of my career, and look, even if you dribble in a little bit of the military, like nothing's guaranteed. In the military, it's your life. Like depending on the role you play, you may not see tomorrow, depending on your mission, the job. And I'm not trying to be, all drama about it. It's real life. The military isn't there to keep you safe and to coddle you. You must execute and you must find ways to grow, survive. Corporate America, I think, should always have a little bit of that in it. I didn't come up in a world where I expected ACS or GenPass or US Bank or Pfizer would check out, take care of me. I have to take care of me. I have to grow me. I am responsible for me. So my contract or agreement with my employer, I know could end tomorrow, the next minute. What am I doing to add value so my name doesn't end up on that list? For better or worse, or the list being, we don't need this person anymore. Or like Rachel said, they're going to shut down this part of the business and focus on this one. Have I positioned myself from a skill set perspective to be valuable no matter what the business's decisions are? That's what everybody should be doing. I'll drift a little bit here and say, I've been the person at the table that chose who to lay off and who not to lay off. And it is awful. If you're the person that has to deliver the message, which I have done dozens of times, and you never get good at it, and you should be grateful you don't get good at it. Like, that is not something you want to say, I'm really good at this. You're bad. I have lumps in my throat or fumble with words, which upsets me because the person receiving that very horrible, bad news deserves better. But my nerves would sometimes get the best of me. You can put that stuff in a cold, dark place, but for the most part, we're all human and you don't ever want to be on the receiving end of that. But I always went into it knowing there's no guarantees. I think everything is free agency. Just like a corporation shouldn't take you for granted. Like, it's a gift that the corporation has your skill set and expertise, but it isn't a God-given right that they appreciate you forever or need you forever, and vice versa. So that's where leadership cuts through the middle of that. True, authentic leadership. Honest and open dialogue about performance, execution, what you need to be successful needs to be had. So if the day ever comes where that relationship ends or the expectation's already set, the expectation between employee and employer, and I don't mean the individual manager, I mean the corporation, because listen, everybody, some managers, even SVPs or EVPs, they don't have the choice. They don't wake up in the morning and say, okay, we're going to do this today. Maybe something happened in the environment and they have to react, and they're human and they're probably going to make mistakes. That the expectation is execute, be valuable. And if you don't know how to be valuable where you work or where you're operating or on whatever mission you're on, you better be asking. It's okay to ask. Let's say an organization isn't really well built to make sure you know what the expectations are of you, and vice versa. You have to take the initiative to seek it. If your boss isn't good at one-on-ones or don't have a regular staff meeting, which is sad, take control of your environment as it relates to how you operate in it. I think that's the agreement with yourself. I don't know if the agreement is with your employer or the corporation where you work. I think you have to have an agreement with yourself that you will be bold and seek what the expectation is of you and work hard to exceed it. Don't go for average ever, whatever average is. Go higher, go more. To have pride in yourself that you want to do the best you can do with what you know. And if you're not getting the help to do it, go seek it.
I love that. I think it's something that some people like you had the privilege to grow up with. And for other people, they're just realizing that they have to do that now, which can be really difficult. In my experience, what I've seen, because I've worked at companies that have been around for a really long time. I remember when I was at AT&T, I had a direct report who had been working at the company since before I was born.
Wow.
And at Fidelity Investments, I worked with people who had been there for decades. And those people genuinely loved the company and their own personal identity were sometimes indistinguishable. And they never expected to leave. And some of them didn't, and some of them won't. But the career choices that those people made were different career choices than people like me made, right? Who chose to explore, right? And learn different industries and contribute to different companies. They never considered that somebody from outside that company would look at their resume and decide, hey, where do you belong? Where do you fit? So they were able, and they did take some creative license in their career choices where they went from product to sales to marketing to HR or whatever, because those companies valued internal mobility. But when it came time to look outside, companies were like, who are you and where do I even put you? Because that doesn't make sense. I think people who have a more external lens try and build a career, whether it's a lattice or a ladder, but in a way that it would be more understandable or it would be easier for them to fit in elsewhere. I think there's always been leaders who are very judgy about job hopping. It's actually illegal in some states in the United States to discriminate against someone because they have a career break or because they are unemployed. And in some cases, it becomes sensitive where you don't even ask, hey, why weren't you working during this time? I've always encouraged hiring managers and business leaders to really think through the context before they make judgments, right? Which is a good practice in other areas of life also. But for example, if you see that somebody left a company in 2008, well, was it because of the financial crisis that happened then, right? Think through what might be going on in that world and why they made certain choices. Sometimes if somebody leaves a company early on, it's actually an indication of smarts and of good judgment, right? Maybe they realized that this wasn't the right fit and they caught it early. So really think through someone's story and understand why they may have made certain changes before writing them off as, oh, they probably weren't successful or they probably got fired every time. Getting an understanding of what your role is from an employer, but also from the employee's perspective of what will I gain from this job? If I take a new job, what am I looking to get out of it? Yes, I'll contribute, and that's what you want to focus on when you're interviewing. But when you think through, after I'm done with this job, whether it takes 2 years or 5 years or 10 years, what do I want to have accomplished? Are there skills I want to learn? Are there experiences I want to attain? How do I want to be a better professional afterwards? And make that part of your goal. And so you might decide after 3 years, hey, you know what? I've gotten all I can. And now it's time for me to look for something new. And that's where you see people looking for the gig economy versus taking a traditional job like they did before. Now, 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, Reid Hoffman, who's one of the founders of LinkedIn, published this book called The Alliance. It's a very thin book. It's a very easy read. It was very popular back 10 years ago. And recently, I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it. It's published by the Harvard Business Review. But essentially, Hoffman talks about how the contract, in quotes, between employer and employees are changing. And it's more like a tour of duty in the military, right? Which you're very familiar with, Patrick, right? People swap jobs and assignments all the time, right? And they're told in the military, hey, you're switching to a new job tomorrow. Here's the book, read it and get ready. And people do that. And it's just part of the routine because when your mission is done, you move on to the next mission, right? Isn't that how it works in the military? We have not adopted that as much as we should have in the corporate space and in the business world. And sometimes people linger and languish in jobs, way past their own productivity or way past their job's purpose. And I think we'll see more and more of that as AI starts taking hold. And so when you think through what your tour of duty is going to be, have a conversation, like Patrick said, with your manager. What are the goals for this role? What does the company need to get from me in this position? And then what do I want to get from it? Do I want some development? Do I want some exposure? Do I want some access? And then decide how long you think that will take and check in, right? Your initial assessment may not be correct. You may need more time. You may find that you need less time. But setting those expectations and then focusing towards achieving that mission and then starting whatever mission is new is a great way to make sure nobody has unnecessary resentments. People and jobs don't become stale. And then you don't get surprised, right, when the rules change on you.
Yeah. I'll close it with some actionable items that may land differently depending on who the listener is. But I think in the end of this dialogue is the covenant or contract or expectation between employee and employer should really be with yourself.
Yeah.
The agreement's with yourself. What do you want? How are you going to go about it? No one owes you anything. Life is hard. There's lots of dialogue around the 8th place trophy generation. Like everyone gets a ribbon. Winners and losers are no more. But that was never really true. You make yourself the winner because of your choices, and you get to decide where the finish line is. No one else is going to help you across that finish line. And I'll say it again, no one owes you anything. You owe yourself the best effort you can bring forward. And sometimes, like Rachel just said, and I've said, you have to go get it yourself. If your boss or manager or leader or whatever you define them as, your colonel, your whatever, isn't getting you what you need that you think you need to be successful, go get it. You own that outcome.
Thanks for joining us.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to Leadership and Motivation Unleashed. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating and review. It only takes 1 minute and it helps the show grow and reach more leaders like you in search of advice and motivation.
And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Please remember to share with your friends and family and coworkers, mentors, trusted advisors. This show is for everybody. See you next time.